Hey, what's up guys, my name is Charlie. Today we're going to be doing some more requested reaction videos, and this video is requested by Scalo Potion 301, and it's going to be Johnny versus Crash Bandicoot. Oh boy, Crash Bandicoot, I remember this for the PlayStation 1, I remember playing this. I also remember Spyro for the PlayStation 1, that was also awesome. I think Crash Bandicoot and Spyro were the sort of two best sort of games for the PlayStation 1 era. But also, I played the games, both of them, but I mostly actually played the Resident Evil franchise, because I absolutely loved Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 for the PlayStation 1. It was totally awesome. Yeah, let's check out the video, shall we? Let's go. Crash Bandicoot.
There is just no way in hell you can discuss the PlayStation 1 without bringing up Crash Bandicoot.
Yep,
If you
everyone's
weren't buying a
favorite.
PS1 for Final Fantasy VII, you were most likely buying it for Crash. Now, granted, I could be
Or Resident
overblowing
Evil.
that by a bit, but you still can't deny the marsupial's enormous popularity back then. The original game, released in 1996, would be one of the very first PlayStation games I ever owned, but I can't recall if it was the first. It was thanks to the demo I tried on the Underground Sampler disc that had me hooked on the game to begin with. I
Yeah, I
thought this game
remember the
looked
demo
gorgeous at the
discs.
time, and I still think the game graphically holds up extremely well for PlayStation 1 standards. Crash's model, on the other hand, looks a bit... what's the word I'm looking for? Dopey. Is it me, or does he always look extremely paranoid with this constant head turning? Almost as if he's a secret drug dealer on the lookout for the police.
He's probably
When
on
the day
crack.
finally came when we got the retail version, there was nothing else I played until I got every collectible imaginable. I would lose my physical copies of the Crash Bandicoot franchise as time passed, but thankfully for me, and for you if you're interested and have a PS3, you can download digital versions off the PlayStation Network store, so I'll be playing the games via that method. Alright then, is everyone ready? You guys have
Okay.
been asking me to do this for a long time now, so I can only hope I deliver on the goods.
Crash Bandicoot, the 90s brainchild of Naughty Dog. The team already had their feet wet with earlier games like Keith the Thief, Rings of Power, and Way of the Warrior, but it was Crash Bandicoot that put them on the map, and even now they're still very well known for producing high-quality titles like Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, and most recently The Last of Us. Rock on, Naughty Dog. The combined efforts of Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin conceptualized Crash Bandicoot when they wanted to make an action platform game for the PlayStation 1. A 3D platforming game to be precise, because this is the time when transitioning into the third dimension was all the rage. Here's a fun
Yeah.
fact for all you Crash newbies out there. Back when this game was in development, its codename was Sonic's Ass Game, because the 3D nature of
Wow.
the game always had the camera looking at the main character's backside, and the most popular animal in the platform genre at the time was Sonic the Hedgehog. I guess you can use this codename nowadays to describe a Sonic game you don't like.
Thank you and good night.
If you leave the title screen running long enough, you'll get this
Nice
game's
joke
minuscule
there.
plot. A mad scientist named Neocortex and his assistant Embryo are using animals as test subjects to create an army of super creatures to take over the world. When the experiment on Crash ends in failure, he's chased out of the castle and makes his escape by breaking through a window. A female bandicoot by the name of Tawna, who Crash developed a liking for, is next up in line for experimentation. Not wasting any time, Crash makes his way through the 3 Wumpa Islands to save his possible but never clearly or outright stated girlfriend. And that's about it. As a platformer, Crash Bandicoot doesn't truly break new ground in any specific department. He can jump like anybody in the genre, and he can attack enemies by spinning at them with the simple push of a button. I know this is going to sound a bit odd to some, but killing enemies via spinning was always something I found so rewarding to do, even after playing the game for so many years. It might have something to do with that bullet ricochet noise you hear whenever you connect a hit. Sometimes a spin attack won't cut it though, and you'll have to give enemies a good old-fashioned bop in the head, which I don't think is as graceful as the spin. Crash controls well enough in a 3D environment, which is important because this is the time before analog sticks are pretty much mandatory in any 3D game regardless of the category, but his jumps lean a bit on the heavy side. His flip jump, for instance, isn't as nimble as, say, Sonic's rolling jump, which means you have to be extra careful when timing your killing
God,
stomps.
it reminds me of
His traction on
Pandarum,
the
whatever
ground
that
isn't the
video
stuff
game
of
is,
kings
that
either.
PS1
It's not as
video
bad as
game.
Luigi's in the Lost Levels, but you should
Paradorable.
always take caution on where you stop on tiny platforms. Oh god, that was embarrassing. Finishing a stage requires you to tackle through whatever the level offers and jumping into this magical portal at the end. With this being a platformer, obstacles will come in the form of different types of enemies you can encounter, depending on the level of course, and bottomless pits to jump over with precise jumps. This game loves bottomless pits. It's a good thing Crash doesn't suffer from knockback when getting hit, or else I'd be fucking terrified. No, instead Crash instantly dies upon taking any damage of any sort. Enemy contact, stage hazards, or getting blown up by TNT crates. Inside specially marked boxes you can find Aku Aku. I just sounded like I was advertising a toy you can find in a cereal box. Anyway, Aku Aku is this game's shield. It's a mask with spiritual powers that allows Crash to take an extra hit. You can carry up to 2 Aku Aku masks after finding them, but if you're able to find a third mask, you become invulnerable for a short amount of time, instantly destroy any enemy in your path,
Pretty
break
cool.
any crate without the need to spin, as well as gain a small speed increase while on the ground. That funky theme that played whenever you got a third mask was always one of my favorite tracks in the franchise.
Sounds like the Ace
You can
Ventura
find Aku
dance.
Aku in almost every level, and despite that Crash can't
So
afford to
when
get
he's
hit at
doing
all
the-
without one, I don't think there's any standout
dance.
enemies that'll make you furious over Crash's fragile state of being. Crash Bandicoot has its moments of 2D action, but there's also plenty of this fancy new 3D platforming, like going down these linear hallways where jumping and moving require a bit more thought than the reckless shit you can pull off in 2 dimensions. Crash Bandicoot also just loves throwing extra lives at you, whether it's a whole bunch of Wumper fruit to collect or Crash's shit-eating grin slapped on the box. I managed to max out my lives just an hour into the game. I can't remember if I ever got a game over playing this. I've had plenty of deaths, no doubt about that. One of this game's biggest sources of difficulty, just from the level design alone, comes from the platforming itself. There are periods when you're running from a huge rock or riding a wild hog, but these are very few and far in between. It doesn't take very long for the game to start testing your sense of timing and positioning. In some levels, it's the usual case of jumping across aerial platforms following a certain pattern, and in other levels, you're fighting depth perception itself, either while moving across miniature podiums or hopping on top of extremely skinny ledges, in the dark. The temple ruin locations always made my hands sweat a bit because I was never sure if I was positioned in just the right spot to make a safe landing. I think the camera could have been placed a little higher to make these sort of jumps easier to pull off. The boss encounters aren't very interesting. There's nothing very dynamic about them and just a bunch of repeated cycles with static backgrounds. Not the best, but not the worst I've seen either. The other biggest challenge, which I could safely say is the biggest challenge in the game, is going for 100% completion. For fuck's sake, where do I start? Every
100%
level, except for
completion.
boss stages, have boxes that you can bust open with a simple hop or a spin attack. That's another thing that feels very satisfying to do in this game now that I think about it. Breaking
Break
a whole
shit
bunch
up.
of boxes at once.
Oh yeah,
That
break
feels
that
good.
shit up.
If you can break open every crate located inside the level, you're rewarded with that stage's gem. And getting the 100% mark requires that you get all these gems. Attempting to get every single gem transforms Crash Bandicoot from what was a pretty standard 3D platformer to an entirely different beast altogether. Every stage has checkpoint boxes that you can break, so in the case that you die, you restart from the last checkpoint box you broke. Okay, that's fine enough. After all, if you had to start from the very beginning of the level with some of these stages, that'd be simply maddening. Here's how it works. Checkpoint boxes save your current level progression, but it doesn't save the amount of boxes you destroyed before breaking it. What's that? You broke almost every box at this point of the level? What's that? You're on your third checkpoint box because the level is pretty fucking long as it is? What's that? You died near the end of the level and restarted from your last checkpoint? Well, guess what? Your ass better press start, hit the select button, and choose a stage from the world map again, because those boxes you got earlier in the stage are no longer broken. And in some
Oh,
occasions, it's
damn.
impossible to backtrack to reobtain them. Even when it is possible, you're not only backtracking, but in 3D sections, you're also going backwards against the camera. It doesn't turn around when you move
Jesus.
back. Oh no, that's not the way to progression. It's over that way. There's some levels where facing the camera is the name of the game, like the boulder chasing sequence as I mentioned earlier, but their level design and camera placement accommodate the lack of knowing what's ahead. Traveling against the camera in standard 3D levels is never a fun time, which makes getting the gem in stages like Cortex Power a serious flick in the nuts. It's do or die with no room for error in between. In the case of stages like Up the Creek, you need to travel backwards without really being told to do
the
so.
Creek, that's a
You see this
specific
exclamation box and
sort
you
of
hit it,
title.
but you don't know what it does. Nowadays, I
the
know very
creek.
well that these boxes cause other boxes to appear, usually from these transparent outlines, but in this case, the outlines are completely invisible, meaning you would have no idea that boxes would spawn here after hitting the exclamation box further up the stage. For years, I always thought that boxes destroyed via TNT explosions didn't count because of how the tally at the end of the stage kept insisting that I was missing boxes I thought were clearly gone. And let me tell you, in this game, there's nothing more frustrating than the stage telling you that you're off by one box. Oh,
I
come
hear
on.
that first.
TNT crates are part of the box total to grab the gem, but obviously spinning on them is a bad idea. You have to jump on them to activate the timer so you can safely get away in time. However, in the situation where the TNT box is grouped with a bunch of other boxes, including more TNT boxes, you need to make sure you see that son of a bitch explode. If you activate the timer and travel too far away, the active TNT box will explode, but nothing else will be destroyed. Just
Oh, that sucks.
there's a number of levels where you can't even collect all the boxes in until you get the corresponding color gem in another level, which, you know, I'll be frank, doesn't bother me too much because the levels don't tend to be very long anyway, unless it's something like Sunset Vista where it never seems to fucking end, or Slippery Climb, which really tests your platforming skills, but depending on your taste, it can either be a means to flesh out your adventure, or a tiring game of back and forth for the sake of getting everything. Certain boxes contain emblems of your girlfriend. If you collect all 3 in the stage, you can enter a bonus level to score more Wampa Fruit for extra lives, or just extra lives in boxes overall.
I've never
This is
gotten this
also how
far
you
into the
save
game.
the game. I repeat, in order to simply save the game, you gotta find 3 emblems across the stage, beat the bonus level, and then step on the transporter. If you don't have a memory card, you're gonna have to use this password feature to pick up where you left off.
Ah,
And if you manage
fucking
to get any
password
gems,
screens.
then the password just became a marathon of button inputs.
Oh
So is there
god.
any point of getting all the gems besides bragging rights? No, not really. You can manage to get an alternate ending after rescuing your girlfriend, but even if you defeat Cortex without going after the gems, you still rescue your girlfriend in the end anyway. Actually, the 100% ending is a bit anticlimactic compared to the normal ending, because the stage that requires you to have all the gems to rescue Tawna is located before the final boss level, so you can possibly save Tawna without ever having to face Cortex. Off the top of my head, I don't think I ever played a platformer that allowed me to do that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Nearly 18 years after its debut, the first game in the Crash Bandicoot franchise is something I believe platformer enthusiasts can welcome. But if I were to recommend you a game in the series, Crash 1 wouldn't immediately come to mind. It's
There
the
are
first
other
game in the
games.
series, and hot damn does it sure feel like it. If you don't feel like going after the gems, you can beat this game in just a few hours, even if it's your first time. But be prepared to have your patience tested and tempered if you decide to go for 100% completion. The lack of analog control may be a turnoff for gamers of today, but I still think Crash handles well enough with the D-pad. And while I may not revisit this often now, it's still a reasonably solid game that you should try out, if only to see how Crash Bandicoot got his start. The first title undeniably left its mark on the PlayStation 1. It's the second best-selling Crash game on the system with over 6 million copies sold. And the main character himself will be seen as the makeshift mascot for the PlayStation in the late 90s. I say makeshift because I don't think it was ever confirmed that he was the official mascot of PlayStation. But I guess it doesn't really matter if a bunch of people thought he was anyway.
Naughty Dog, without a doubt, knew they had something going here, and 1 year after the release of the original game, we got its sequel. But that's for next time, so I'll see you guys then with Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. Thank you guys
Alright.
for watching, have a great night, and take care.
I haven't played the second one. I only played the first one for the PlayStation. Oh boy. Okay, so that was Johnny versus Crash Bandicoot. I played it before, but to be honest, I mostly played Resident Evil, Harry Potter for the PS1, and a bunch of other games. So what was that Bubble Buster game where you shoot bubbles and you try to pop it? It's like Dinosaur Bubble Bopper? Bubble Popper or something. I don't know what you call it, Bubble Buster or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. It was a dinosaur and you shoot bubbles. It was really weird, I know. I think there is a Crash Bandicoot saying trilogy for Steam and something like that. There's been enhanced graphics, remastered and everything like that. It'd be pretty cool to get that for Steam. I think Spyro also has a sort of remastered edition as well. A remake over. So yeah, there's pretty two cool games to have. Now all you need is the classic original Resident Evil remastered. Well, there is, but it's not the same. There is Resident Evil remastered, but it's not the same. I want the classic enhanced. But not the remake classic, but the classic, just upgraded pixel textures. That's it, really. Yeah. If you like this video, make sure to give a like, comment down below, and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.